Calling the Environmental and Natural Resources Commission meeting to order. Oh, yeah, I thumbs upped them. Right. Yeah, we're good. We're recording. Okay. So, call to order. Yes. And this evening, roll call. Commissioner Gill. Present. Commissioner Miller. Here. Commissioner Bryan, I am here. Absent today are Commissioner Redmond and Commissioner Broadnax. Also approval of agenda. We last met on November 30th, and of the three commissioners present, only Commissioner Gill and myself were at that meeting. Staff, are we able to accept the meeting or put forward a motion to accept those meeting minutes?
Madam Chair, if I could direct your attention to approval of the agenda, item 3.
Oh, yeah, I suppose we could do that one first. Is there some, we have before us agenda approval. Everyone's got a copy. Do we have a motion to approve this evening's agenda?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
All right, Commissioner. All right, put forward by Commissioner Miller, approved by Commissioner Gill. All in favor? Aye. Aye, all right. We're good on that one.
Yep.
Thank you, staff. Now we'll discuss about the approval of the October minutes. We can approve those because I believe all of us were present. So do we have a motion to approve the October 25th minutes?
I'll move to approve the October 25th minutes.
Second. All right, so moved. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, now onto the question of what to do with the November 30th minutes. Staff? Will Commissioner Gill and myself be able to approve those minutes, or should we table that until we are meeting next month?
I see. Let's see. So we had at that meeting Commissioner Broadnax, Bryan, and Gill. And okay. Well, so we're missing Ted Redmond. We could also table these. It's not imperative that they're.
So we'll just wait and to approve that until we meet next to make sure we've got more staff here. Okay, so then approving on to new business. Before there's a wetland buffer variance along County Road C. If you can please describe that.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. So tonight, our one agenda item, besides staff presentations, will be the wetland buffer variance for an assisted living and memory care project at 1910 County Road C. And on the overhead here, I do have a map of that location. It's a vacant lot located on the southwest corner of County Road C and White Bear Avenue. It's tucked behind some existing businesses, a car wash, a medical building, and then residential along County Road C there. And they have access to that property on County Road C. They share that access with the car wash. Galahad. My apologies. Galahad Development, LLC, proposes constructing a 61,148 square foot, two-story assisted living and memory care building on the vacant land at 1910 County Road C. To move forward with this project, the applicant requests City Council approval for a conditional use permit, wetland buffer variance, and design review. The Environmental and Natural Resources Commission will review and make recommendations on the wetland buffer variance and mitigation strategies during tonight's meeting. So we'll be looking at the tree removal and replacement proposal, the landscaping plan, and proposals for doing some wetland buffer improvements with native plantings. So that's what we're looking at tonight for approval of the wetland buffer variance and then those mitigation strategies. So we're going to take a look to begin with at the tree impacts. So it is a heavily wooded lot, And the applicants had a tree survey completed, as you can see on the overhead here. There are 124 large trees on the site. However, only 85 of those trees are defined as significant trees, which are ordinance defined as a hardwood 6 inches or over, a conifer 8 inches or over, or a softwood 12 inches or over. So 85 of those trees are defined as a significant tree according to our ordinance. And much is that due to the health of the tree, or because they are an invasive species, those other trees. So 2 of the significant trees are classified as a specimen tree, and in our ordinance we define any tree that's over 28 diameters, 28 diameters to be a specimen tree, and 2 of those trees are a bur oak and a white oak. So overall, there are 1,271 diameter inches of significant trees on this site. So you can see there's quite a bit of tree coverage here. So for this development, the applicants are proposing to remove 56 significant trees equaling 907 diameter inches. And this includes one of those specimen trees, so they are preserving one of those trees. This represents 71% of the trees removed on this site. And according to city ordinance, there's a calculation that you put together, and it's dependent on the number of trees on the site, the number and size of trees that are being removed, and then it's plugged into a calculation. And what it has determined here is that the applicant would be required to replace 685 caliper inches of trees. And to put that into perspective, most new trees are 2 inches or larger, so it would be 342 2-inch trees, which it seems clear there's not room for an additional 342 trees. So on the landscape plan here, which was submitted by the applicant, it does show 54 new trees ranging in size from 2 to 4 caliper inches, and that totals 172 caliper inches of replacement trees on this site. But this is still 513 caliper inches less than city ordinance requires. Again, it's at 685 minus the proposed 172, so it leaves that 513 that are, still to be addressed. So staff is recommending that the applicant look for opportunities to plant trees where they can on the site, and then if that is not feasible, or once they've included a few more, they do have the option to pay into the city's tree fund, and that is at a rate of $60 per caliper inch of tree that cannot be planted on site. And then the city of Maplewood utilizes that tree fund to manage trees on public property in our parks and in our right-of-ways. We're going to move on to the wetlands now. So this is a map of the wetlands in that location. You can see it's surrounded by a managed B wetland that's on the south. That kind of curved area is actually a creek. And then a managed C wetland that's located on the west side of the lot. Ramsey Washington Metro Watershed District has reviewed and approved the wetland delineation report that was submitted by the applicant, and it identified that there's actually 3 wetlands, or what was thought to be 3 wetlands to begin with. So wetland 1, as you can see, is the one on the south, and that includes that creek. Wetland 2 is that managed C wetland to the east of the property, and then wetland 3, the watershed district and the delineation determined that that is actually an incidental wetland or a man-made wetland, whereas now it's not covered by the city's ordinance. So it's likely something that developed due to some developments in that area due to grading, due to the street projects. So it wasn't a naturalized wetland, so it's an incidental wetland. So on the wetland 1, which is, the wetland itself is a manage B. However, in the City of Maplewood's wetland ordinance, a creek, which is defined, has a required 100-foot buffer. So even though it's a manage B, which has a required 75-foot buffer, because it has this creek element, the ordinance kind of kicks it up to a manage A and requires this 100-foot buffer. And the wetland 2, which is that manage C, that has a required 50-foot buffer. And of course, those buffers are dependent on the nature of the wetland. Manage C is the most kind of degraded wetland of the wetlands, and a manage A would be kind of the most pristine wetland. And looking at the 50-foot as a minimum for water quality, and then that 100-foot, according to the ordinance when this was adopted, for water quality and, anything over that 50 feet looking at for wildlife habitat. So the ordinance does allow a 75-foot average for that creek buffer, so you can encroach as close as 75 feet as long as you average along the portion of the creek on the lot there, as long as you average to 100. So the applicants are attempting to follow that 75-foot average. Here are some pictures of the existing wetland. You'll see the creek. It has a culvert that you'll see at the end of that picture there on the top, and that culvert carries the creek under White Bear Avenue. And then you can see looking southwest, this is wetland 2, or the managed C wetland. And then here is that incidental wetland. You can see the development nearby, and it's just kind of a low-lying area. So the main wetland buffer disturbance will be due to rerouting the stormwater system with a new discharge into the creek and removing the old system. So you can see on this storm sewer map here, the blue area that's located on the west side of the property, that's the pipe that will be removed, and then that culvert that goes into the creek, that will be removed, so that will assist with improving stormwater, and then a new system will be added. That'll be on the east side of that buffer, as you can see. So because of those two encroachments, they will be required to have approval of a 100-foot buffer, even though, as you can see from this map, the blue area is the area where they will be reestablishing the buffer. The red area is where they're encroaching into that 75-foot buffer, and then the green area is where they were attempting to increase the buffer to maintain that 75-foot average. So all that would have met our code, and they wouldn't have needed a variance except for this stormwater piping encroachment. So now moving on to how they'll mitigate that impact. So again, we have that same landscape plan in front of you here. And the applicants are proposing to remove and improve the existing stormwater pipes that flow into the creek, as I indicated. That'll improve the water quality that's entering that creek. They are proposing to plant native seed within that 100-foot disturbed creek buffer. So it would be native plants, but planted in the form of seed. So staff took a look at this mitigation, and we have a couple recommendations for consideration by the Environmental Commission. Number one is to include seed and native plugs in all areas of the wetland buffer encroachment, including the southwest corner of the lot. It kind of appeared that they had missed a spot. I'm not sure on that encroachment with the stormwater pipe there on the west side. But we would like to see native seed in portions of all disturbed areas, and then adding the plugs as well. So using plugs will increase the establishment success, decrease erosion during establishment due to seed washing away during rain events, and then decrease weeds. So it will lower the maintenance cost, and then plugs should be installed in a grid 12 to 24 inches apart, depending on species. So that is one of the recommendations, is to add the plugs and ensure the seed is all over the area that was disturbed. And another item, as we do with all of our wetland buffers, is to require wetland buffer signs, and we'd like to see those located at least every 100 feet at a minimum along the established buffer line. And the city of Maplewood actually makes those signs, and then we charge a small fee to the developer. So those are the mitigation strategies they are proposing along that south portion with the encroachments to the creek. And with that, city staff is recommending approval of the wetland buffer variance and wetland buffer mitigation strategies for the assisted living and memory care facility that is proposed to be constructed on the vacant lot at 1910 County Road C East. And I would like to point out that the conditional use permit and design review will be reviewed by our Planning Commission and Design Review Board on February 21st. And, of course, they'll be looking at your recommendation as well. And then final review by the City Council, I believe it's tentative February 27th or possibly March 13th. So with that, I will stand for questions. And I did want to point out that the developer is here for questions and answers as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, staff. Are there any questions or comments? Any clarifying questions for staff? Or otherwise, I will invite our guest up here to be available to answer any other questions. Come on up.
Name, address. Do you need anything special from me? Okay, well, I'm just, by means of introduction, my name's Lucas Larson. I own Galahad Development, so we're the one making the proposal here tonight. I wanted the engineer and the landscape architect to be here because they have much more technical knowledge about this stuff than I do, but unfortunately they couldn't make it. But I did have an opportunity to talk with them. We reviewed the agenda together earlier, the packet together earlier, and looked at some of these items. And so I can offer some tidbits right off, just some feedback from our end off from the start for you to consider, and then obviously I'm welcome just to take any questions that you guys have, and if I don't have the answers to them, I'm happy to write them down and get back to you. So first off, one of the considerations in the packet, or one of the issues in the packet, had to do with the amount of trees to be planted on the site. So I was told by our landscape architect that the plan in the packet was from November, and we revised the plan in December, which included actually reducing the amount of trees that we would remove from the site. I don't have the number of trees for you, but I have the caliper inches. So the original plan that's in the packet tonight contemplated removing 907 caliper inches of trees, and we were able to reduce that down to 824 caliper inches of trees. So that being said, I basically gave the landscape architect the direction: plant as many trees on the site as you possibly can, because I like the trees too. I think it's great. That being said, as staff said earlier, we just don't have the room to plant as many trees on the site as what would be required by code. So, so we were able to reduce our impact on the trees, but we're still planning on having to pay into the city tree fund. The only other comment that I had from the landscape architect specifically was he commented on, and frankly, I don't have a lot of knowledge on this, so I'm just letting you know what he told me. He said it's very typical for them just to seed upland areas with with respect to repairing the wetland buffer with the wildflowers. He said it's much more typical to seed the upland than it is to use plugs. He said typically they use plugs in basins, wet areas that would be very difficult to establish. There is a cost for me to do the plugs, just so you're aware. It's going to be probably $5,000 to $10,000. You guys are ultimately have the authority to make that call, but I'm just kind of putting that out there. So those are the two major things that I took from my conversations earlier today with my guys. So beyond that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Well, thank you very much. Commissioner Miller or Commissioner Gill, do you have any questions or comments on the plan?
I guess just one. I'll have a few questions, I think, but the future edition by others, trying to scroll back and forth between the packet. What's the existing land use now, and what will it be?
I think
That southeast corner there.
Yeah.
Just
I think the existing. This may be a better question for staff. I think the existing land use is business commercial, which is why we're requesting the CUP for our assisted living use. Just some background on the site, so you're aware. The gentleman who owns the Minnesota Women's Clinic right off White Bear Ave, immediately east of this site, also owns this site. And so he and I had an agreement that because I'm not maxing out the site's density, he wanted to try to retain a portion of the site to expand his clinic in the future. And so that's technically not part of our assisted living proposal. We're planning to subdivide the property, and he would retain like 3/4 of an acre on which he would, in the future, develop his clinic.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Miller, you've been diligently taking notes.
Oh,
and-
that's okay. I did have a chance to go visit the site today, and it's actually an area that I'm fairly familiar with. And I do think that some plugs would be a good idea, although the gradient isn't very strong, like for flooding, wash away isn't as big of a deal, but the biggest concern that I noticed that isn't really talked about on this is the land, which would be on County Road C, is a car wash, and it only comes to understand that maybe the distance, that wetland, number three, might be because they have so much water coming and going and everything is paved around it. And that concerns me because if we are moving where stormwater goes, that's going to end up being a problem, I think, because if it's already forming its own wetland without anybody doing anything about it, it seems like that may be some sort of issue, just something that I noticed. And one of the other things is I know that parking was talked about in the packet, and you did talk to the neighbors and all that stuff about parking, and the parking is an issue behind the women's clinic, and I understand that that's their issue. And I really see no reason not to build up on that higher end, but I did notice that where the gradients start to go to where there's little hills, when you go further west, sorry, these are all going the wrong way, so the way I was looking at it. Oh no, wait, north. The further north you go, where there's hills and more of the vegetation and more of the trees, I guess it seems to me that where the creek is, where it comes underneath White Bear, that may naturally shift, and I'm worried that if we do, I don't know, one of those things where if you try to control nature, it ends up not doing us very much good, and I'm worried that that's going to undercut some of the stuff on that edge, and so I couldn't quite see the building that's up on the screen right now. The very bottom part, that little part that comes out, what is that? Is that a deck or is that a?
It's a patio, like a slab on.
Like a patio?
Yeah.
Okay. Which makes sense. Because it's beautiful over there. And I'm a little bit like worried that that's going to go away because if the Women's Center comes back further, your views are going to be inhibited there as well because that's where they're planning on going, right? So you're going to check out the back of the Women's Center?
The women's clinic expansion would be the portion on the very east of the site.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. It's you can't tell on these pictures how tight it is back there, and I realize that there's snow there and stuff like that too, but I had to do like a 12-point turn just to get out of their driveway, and there wasn't really snow on their area, and I understand that those were some of the concerns of your neighbors, and that's not really what you have to deal with because that's all on them. But I am worried about how water is going to impact that because if you are switching where the water's going at the bottom part of that driveway or the bottom part of that parking lot and the north part of that parking lot, oh God, it's sideways. It kind of feels like you guys are going to be underwater a lot. You're going to have issues with water once you make this not porous area. Because it seems like it's kind of already telling us that there's a lot of places that water's trying to find a place to go. Yes, please.
So I have, I wrote down just to make sure that I understood your questions.
Yeah.
I think 2 or 3 issues. One was the standing water basically to the south of the car wash. It's technically still on their property. That what was originally considered wetland 3, but was then determined the de minimis.
Right.
So I have standing water basically, Minnesota Women's Clinic parking, what's going on between them, because that was in the packet, what's going on between
Right.
them and their neighbor to the north.
Correct.
Because Mr. Hesley wrote an email into the city.
Oh, yeah.
And then the third issue was parking and circulation, I believe, with respect to the car wash. I think those were your 3 concerns.
Yeah, the
Right
wetland
off C
for the
there.
car wash,
Yeah.
and then is there just, I'm just thinking if there might, it seems like there would be a lot more efficient way to have parking for everybody if you guys weren't trying to have your own, in your own concealed area. Because it's like like right now, there's going to be so much parking that doesn't make sense for anybody else except for the specific entity, and I get that. And it's overflowing into everybody else's right now, and now you're also going to end up with a lot of water in between on both sides.
So I'll take a stab
please.
at standing water generally. So the site will be engineered to accommodate like all the runoff, including all the impervious, the new impervious cover that we'll be building. One reason too there could be standing water in areas of this site is there's actually a sheet drainage easement from the uses on the east currently that allow them just to basically dump water onto this site. So we've factored all of that into our stormwater calculations in an effort to prevent any standing water. I mean, standing water doesn't benefit us in the least either. So, that was my direction to our engineers is factor in anything related to the easements that dumps water on the site, and then obviously. They're just naturally going to account for any of the additional impervious coverage that will be added to the site.
Right. And then the water getting rushed straight to the lake.
The water getting rushed straight to the
Like
lake.
from the storm water, it goes into the creek and then, you know what I mean? Like that, if you, God, where's the one with all the water?
I think there's some infiltration, underground infiltration
yeah.
or filtration to address.
Good, and we're taking a lot of that away is what
Yeah.
my point is.
No,
'cause-
we're building 2 large underground underground
Okay.
storage tanks and filtration systems, basically.
Okay,
Yeah, to help with water quality.
okay, that was my question, is
Yes.
there filtration, not
Yes, there
just we're getting water from here to
No,
here?
no.
'Cause
we're-
I thought
we're
I
not
heard
just
her say
dumping-
that, but I
No,
couldn't
we're not just
remember.
dumping water.
Okay. And then, shoot, I wish I had, yeah, that car wash thing, like, you could just tell that could very easily just be a marsh. Like, and it's not a good one. Like, it's going to
Yeah.
be runoff from theirs. And that just is such a gross spot right there. And then the reason I was kind of waiting is I couldn't find, I did a really good job of messing up my order of sheets here. And I had one that showed, well, I guess this one's as good as any, where the Manage B and the Manage C areas are. And you can see that they're kind of, oh, you're so awesome, Sean. Kinda. Yeah, there you go. That one works. Because you can kind of see the flow of where nature's going, kind of thing, and the corridor between the Manage B going north. That is north, right? Oh, God, this whole sideway thing. Going
east.
into the Manage C. Yeah. We have so many issues with nature trying to get from here to there, and we are cutting off all of the little spaces for them to get from here to there without, going over roads or too many roads or too many obstacles. And so my concern was that kind of, do we know what kind of wildlife is in that area at all? I mean, I know what I have not very far away, but.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
I mean, we don't other than.
Okay.
Yeah.
We were looking for tracks, me and my son, that's what we were doing.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I'm sure there is wildlife down in those wetland areas.
Yeah.
As like, it seems obvious to me that would be the case. So,
Right.
Yeah, I think I guess my answer to that concern. I mean, there's one immediate answer looking at this image that's on the screens right now. I would say these are imperfect representations of where the wetlands actually are. So, like, if you actually wanted to know where the wetlands are, you'd want to consider the actual delineation that we did.
Yeah.
So that's one thing to consider. So we won't be impacting the wetlands themselves. That's why those buffers were put in place that we're working around.
Right.
So I think that was, I guess, the image to me is a little bit off, and I can understand how it would look like we're going to just like tear apart wetlands based on the image, but I don't think that's the case. And then the second, like I said, I guess answer to your concern, or what my answer would be to your concern, is that those buffers are put in place to help with those concerns, and we are abiding by those buffers.
Yeah, no, yeah. I really appreciate that. And one suggestion from my son, which made I love my 15-year-old son, he's amazing, is where the bottom patio area was, and I realized that would be facing south, so that would be really nice. But if you put that on the west side, so you could be looking into the woods instead of at the back of something that may not be there soon, that would help a lot with some of the barrier infiltration as well.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, because, what do you want to look at,
Yeah.
But that would help out a lot, because they could see the woods, and you could put bird feeders and see the animals and all that kind of stuff, and actually be looking away and have a lot more sound barrier, and help kind of enjoy that area instead of kind of building that way. That's why we're kind of like, move away from the trees a little bit and make that part of why people want to live there.
Yeah. So I like the site because it is so nature, and I feel like I'm 100% compelled to. Staff and I have had this conversation. I feel 100% compelled to keep it as that way as possible. And the reason that patio is where it is, which you don't have. I'm not sure this was in the packet. You don't have the floor plans of the building, but the building has to lay out in a very specific manner based on building and licensing codes,
Sure.
where assisted living units are and where memory care units are, and where we're going to put our kitchen and our dining and our amenities. And so the reason that's there is simply because with all the other considerations between the site constraints, the buffers, trying our best not to remove as many or remove as few trees as we possibly can, having to lay out the building in a certain orientation. You kind of go through all the layers, and that's where we got with the and it's very important for me. I'm a huge believer in seniors especially, but in humans generally being connected outside, and so having that being the best. It was either for us. It was either not do it,
right,
or put it there.
Okay.
And so for me, it was like, well, put it there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering because I've worked in an assisted living, in a nursing home, and that's all they wanted to do was watch the birds.
100%.
Like,
Yeah.
that's the animals and the birds, and they could really give a rat's patoot if they're, I mean, generally, when in the further stages, if their family came, because they didn't know who they were. They just wanted to see the fuzzy animals
Yes,
and the birds. And so having that, this is such a good opportunity for that. And I love to hear that that's important to you as well. And I just think that that could be a real big plus for you guys to save as much as possible and to create as many spaces for these trees, because that's, and I do understand the other, for recreation planning services, that's what I have my degree in. And so I get the whole, you have to have certain security issues for, where people can see and get and all that stuff. The parking, is that in the middle of the U? Is that for you guys?
Okay. So there's, I don't have the exact count off my head, but I want to say there's 20 to 25 stalls. That's
Okay.
Sort of the courtyard of the building, and then underneath that, there's also an additional infiltration tank for stormwater management.
Okay, because one of the other things that we do is we do permaculture for seniors, what I do for other things. And so that's another thing, is there's a really cool way to get seniors getting their hands dirty and their gardening, because a lot of people, they've been doing that their whole life, and that really speaks to them, and it really heals a lot of things. And so just a suggestion, if there's a way to implement that for everybody else except for the short side of the U.
Yeah.
Because they get basically industry over there.
Yeah.
That would be really cool.
Yeah, we'll have, this is less about it kind of overlaps with the environmental stuff, but we will have a bunch of managed programs. We have people on staff, and one of them is just like basically agriculture or biology based, where they're
Awesome.
planting. We have, that'll absolutely be part
Make
of
sure
the
everything's edible. Just saying.
Fair
I've been
enough.
there. No toxic plants. Okay. Actually, that some of the things that you said kind of answered some of my questions. I just really wish that the building could be in one side and all the nature could be preserved with the courtyard on the outside. That makes sense. But if you have to have them separate, I guess I can kind of understand that. But, I'll probably keep thinking of things, because that's just what I do. So thank you for your answers.
You're welcome.
For what you have.
And thank you very much I see that you included the plan and just recommendations for the changes in species. And so I enjoy seeing that there's going to be working on getting a lot of native plants and things established in there. So thank you for including that. Any other questions or comments?
I just have a question about for removing the existing stormwater and installing the new pipe. Looks like there's some existing erosion there currently. I guess how far out do you plan on installing the flared end and then the riprap, and then that's kind of it?
Yeah, so we had discussions with staff about this, and my MO, and it was sort of collectively agreed upon that we want to disturb the buffer areas as little as possible. Mm-hmm. So you're exactly right. Our goal is basically to go in with as small of a skid or whatever piece of equipment we can, remove the flared end off that, cap it permanently, and then we're going to abandon the existing line, and then pull the new one around to the east.
Okay. I was just thinking, if it's not too far out of the scope, that erosion, trying to incorporate addressing some of that, since you're already down there doing the work, if possible. I don't know the scale and the reference to where you'll actually be in there from the photos, but just another thought I had.
Is just so I may not be as familiar with the erosion as you are, just to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
So do you have personal experience walking the site and seeing that area is eroded, or?
I haven't been to the site, but I just saw from the pictures.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
So, that's why I was kind of a question, because I'm not really sure if it's really feasible or you'd be going way outside the project limits to try to address this issue or not. So.
Yeah, as you can see, our lot line is that dotted line there on the plan, and so the actual flared end section, I don't know where the existing flared end section is. It's either just within our property boundary or just outside of it. But obviously the new one is going to be off of our property.
Okay.
Or just off of it. I guess all I can say to your question at this point is our goal is to leave this in better condition than when we found it. So, we don't have any like specific plans to address erosion in this area, but we will, like I said, we'll leave it in better condition than we found it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I remembered what I was going to say with the plugs versus the seed. The reason I asked you about the wildlife in this area is I have woods in my backyard. And if we put seed out, we'll have 30 turkeys taking it all. If you have plugs in, at least the roots are in there. Because we have, I'm not kidding. It looks like the march, we play it in the they're coming to take us away, haha, because they march right down the street and go to whoever's planted anything.
I'd show you, so my in-law, this is tangential, but my in-laws live in central Wisconsin.
Oh, yeah.
On 40 acres. And they have, I have a picture on my phone of about 50 turkeys.
Yeah, yeah.
And they feed the deer and everything, and all the turkeys eat the food. So
And we do have a very healthy population.
I believe that.
But the turkeys, deer, and rabbits, if you just do seed, you're going to have a huge bunch of those, and then it'll all be gone, and you're going to have to reseed.
Fair
So
enough.
I think that including plugs is really important in this area, especially
Okay.
because my backyard goes right up to the Gateway Trail, which is just south of this, and like we have specific deer. I know this sounds so weird, but we have specific deer. Like if they get hit by a car and they just have this one leg hanging, we can still identify them other places in the town because they live forever. It seems like in our world, but we've seen them over in these areas, and so I can't imagine that the turkeys don't, and they destroy any kind of planting. So I really want to, I know that the plugs are more expensive. I just think that'll save money in the long run of reestablishing that area.
Okay.
Even if you have some native sage or something to kind of dissuade them from those areas is probably a pretty great idea. Plus, it would help with the erosion if you did that on, because I know when I'm looking at the site, it's hard to see where it is on this. And I know that when you're sitting in the parking lot looking kind of crossways here, and so basically I'd be looking across the long part of the U. Does that second part of the U go where the hill is? There's like a little hill, or is that too far?
It's a long.
Yeah, because I'm looking at the one with the, the map that tells you that stuff, and it looks
There's like there's a little bit of an existing hill.
right.
It would be on like the west wing of the building.
Yes.
Basically. Yeah.
Okay. And then there's actually a more and it looks kind of like it was probably a dump site for something at some point, and then it just got grown over.
It was.
Yeah, because it doesn't look natural at all. But I mean, it's in there. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that was going to be taken care of, and then the
Yes.
more natural slope on the other side of that, which you can tell was sort of more where water used to be, and it makes more sense over there. So I'm kind of hoping that little weird bump is where this is going to be.
Yeah. So so it will be taken care of.
Cool.
Yes.
Okay, that was the two things I had. Oh, yeah, the mature things within the plugs just will save you a lot of money eventually.
Yeah, it's good feedback. I appreciate it. I don't know anything about that, so.
Any other questions for our guest?
I guess this is for staff. I think your recommendation was adding additional trees than what was proposed, and was that based on the most updated landscape tree preservation plan?
Commissioner Guile, I wasn't aware of this updated plan. I do apologize, but it sounds like they're not removing as many trees as I had thought. Some comparison, like it was 900 and it's only 800 caliber inches or something. At any rate, the recommendation, because they'll still be required, they'll still have a deficit of tree replacement, would be to try and find locations on this property where they can install additional trees, to increase that caliper inch, and then we'll recalculate, and whatever's left over we'll charge the developer for funding the tree fund as mitigation to that tree loss.
Okay, thank you.
Hi again. Just a question about the same type of thing here. Would it make sense to maybe help them get more mature, put some of that money towards getting mature, smaller ground holding things along those banks? Like, could some of that money go towards that instead of, because, like there's not enough room for some of the trees? Or would, just a general question, would some of that money be able to replace all of the ash that are being cut down? Asking for a friend.
Oh.
With 5 ash trees across the
yeah.
street that are getting cut down.
It's beginning to be quite the problem here in Maplewood. So here, if they do increase the caliper inch of the replacement trees, of course, that increases the
Right.
overall caliper inch and reduces the number of trees they have to
Right.
replace. But as far as can any of the tree fund
don't know.
anything on this site,
Yeah.
I mean, that really defeats the purpose, because of course, we're trying to get them to plant the trees, and then trees that they can't plant, we'll use for the public spaces.
Right, no, that's what I mean is, like, could they get more substantial
Right,
trees and more
yes.
substantial things that would count towards that? Because that would
Absolutely.
help them and us, I think.
Right, and I think the landscape plan does call for, I don't have the notes in front of me, but it seemed like it was like, some of the trees were 4 caliper inches
Yeah.
Okay.
and down to 2. So
Okay.
they do have some larger trees that they're proposing.
Okay. And, yeah, and my neighbors are very concerned about the ash trees, so I had to say that. I said it, guys. They're listening, so. Or could they sponsor, like, on that same block or something like that? I don't know how that works. Or it's up to the
Sponsor tree
discretion.
replacement on the block for ash trees that have been removed?
No, I'm sorry. Like, could they sponsor them, like, where the northeast wetland is, where that's just sitting water? If they could put good trees up in that, even if it's not on this property, but right next to it?
Oh, I see.
Could they, because that would help with that water too. Because that's not really being taken, that wetland 3, that little weird, it's,
I think that might be tough because it's a private landowner. You'd have to get their permission, And that fund, correct me, that's for public only, the tree fund, public spaces? only
And
space?
we also use it to offset the cost of trees for residents to purchase
Oh,
Right.
in our
okay.
tree sale.
right.
Yeah. We could look at opportunities to plant trees outside of the lot. Surrounding this lot is Ramsey County Open Space Site.
Right.
So if there is room, and the county was receptive to that, we could look at that as part of tree replacement.
Because
But
technically, that would still benefit this spot, is what I'm thinking. Because you don't want to overcrowd it and then have them not develop and not mature. But if we can still beautify this area and still maybe take care of some of the issues. That was my only thought, sorry.
yeah, for the tree replacement, the ordinance has a few ways to mitigate. First, you're supposed to try to plant as many trees as you can on the site. And second, you can convert caliper inches into native shrubs, only if you're using them for a stormwater management type thing, like in a rain garden or something,
Or
not
on
for
the
like foundational
Side
plantings.
of the creek?
Well, see,
That's what I'm wondering, because that's.
that's
'cause there's the
another
stormwater
kind of
thing.
different scenario, because that's the wetland buffer mitigation. So we're not going to say, mitigate the wetland buffer and then we'll offset your trees, because you have to do
Right.
both.
Right.
So it's kind of a catch-22 there.
Oh, I meant the parts that were already eroding.
Well, that's, the areas that, which I understand might be eroding are with the stormwater pipe existing. And, I did want to mention that those areas, since they'll be down there removing that, and then they'll have to reestablish that buffer area with the seed and possibly plugs if that's a requirement. So all that erosion will be stabilized in that regard.
Perfect, okay.
So at any rate, the two things for mitigating, like I said, was plant trees, native shrubs, but can't be in the wetland buffer because that's a different mitigation. It would have had to been for stormwater management like a rain garden, and that's not the case here. And then, they could plant off-site. That's a possibility that's written in there. And then, of course, this tree fund payment.
Right, and the middle of are these 3 round things in the middle of what did you call it, a courtyard? Are those trees?
Mm-hmm.
So could they be a rain garden? Just throwing it out there.
I don't
I don't
think
know.
there's the room you need for a rain garden. But I did want to address a few things that I heard, just to kind of wrap up those discussions. Mr. Larson did a good job explaining. But the stormwater concerns that I heard mentioned, our engineering department did take a look at the stormwater plan, and I included their engineering review in the staff report. I know there was a lot to read, so I'll just point out that they did say that they are proposing to meet the stormwater requirements via the use of that underground filtration system that Mr. Larson was bringing up, and that the current design does meet the city's stormwater management standards. So they are making improvements to that. I mean, right now, all that water just sheet drains down to the creek. So they'll be treating it in this system underground prior to it just draining into the creek. So that would be an improvement. And then erosion, I think I kind of addressed that they really will have to kind of establish that when they reestablish the buffer there. And then the plugs, that's certainly something up for discussion, as far as how many plugs, maybe it doesn't have to be the full disturbed buffer area. Perhaps it's areas, towards the creek, and then the uplands is the seed. But what we have found in Maplewood is when we see these types of developments that encroach into the buffer and are required to reestablish, we as, the city that a couple years out, we find that they're most successful if they are initially plugs, because it's easier to maintain. And, another thing is the city of Maplewood does require this 3-year maintenance agreement. So we strongly recommend that developers, work with a qualified landscaper, in native plants to maintain that over 3 years. There'll be some weeding and possibly watering if it's too dry. And because it does take that 3 years to establish, and the city of Maplewood retains the escrow until that is established. So I would strongly recommend plugs or a portion of that. And we could work with the developer's landscape architect and our natural resource coordinator to kind of come up with a more detailed plan on that.
When was the proposed time that they were going to start this?
Right now, we're looking at early July of this year.
Because I'd be really interested to see what happens in the spring to this area with all of that.
Currently, if we recommend for approval of this variance, it'll be approved or reviewed by city council on the 21st.
Right.
Which is, and construction and everything will need to be basically going to be well before
Yeah.
melt season and water season.
Right.
Could I just have one more clarifying thing? So if you could pull up the pictures, the field pictures. So when you're saying they're going to address the erosion, the one that's labeled view of wetland 1 looking southwest along the channel, will that be addressed, or just right in front of the existing pipe?
I would say right in front of the existing pipe, because that's not our property, and so we actually have to get permission to. The stuff that's not on our property, we have to have permission to work with. Yeah.
And even just to replace the pipe, I'm sure you had to get permission.
Yes.
For to do that.
Yes.
So. I just wanted clarification, because it does look like there's some significant erosion there. And is this the only existing pipe within the vicinity that flows into the creek? assuming that the existing pipe probably had a lot to do with that large undercutting you can see in kind of the middle portion of the
Are you
picture.
referring to the upper picture or the lower?
The one that's labeled view of wetland one looking southwest along the channel. So
Okay, that, yeah.
The bottom one.
Yeah, so that would show the box culvert, which we can't really see very well. That must be where the box culvert comes out to drain.
Okay.
And the one on the top, that, you know, this developer is not reestablishing this whole creek
Right.
buffer, but wouldn't that be nice?
Yes.
Yeah, so that this, of course, is within the Ramsey County land. And it does appear that their grading work encroaches into the county land a bit, so I'm assuming they'll have some sort of easement or something with the
Yeah,
county.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just those areas that you see the native seeding is what I was referring to as far as, you know, reestablishing any kind of erosion that's going on there.
Yep. I'm on the same page now, so
Yeah.
thanks.
Can I ask where the proposed storm manhole is? Because I just may not be seeing it. I'm looking at the storm sewer underneath stuff. It says existing, the very top one, existing storm sewer to connect to proposed storm manhole, but I don't see where that is.
I believe the existing manhole is.
It's existing already?
Yeah, there's already, because the storm water's already there.
Okay,
I
'cause
believe
it-
there's an existing manhole, what's the best way to describe it? It'd be right off, it'd be the very northern part of the picture of what you're looking at on the screen right now.
Oh,
I'm not sure if the engineering plan was in the packet or not, but
okay. Because it just says to proposed manhole, so I'm like, where is it?
Yeah, I don't think we have the utility
Okay.
yeah.
Thanks, I just wanted to see if I was not seeing it.
Okay. Well, so before us, we do have a recommended action. So this is a motion to approve the wetland buffer variance and wetland buffer mitigation strategies for a two-story assisted living and memory care facility to be constructed on vacant land at 1910 County Road C East. So do we have a motion to recommend this, a motion to recommend to council the wetland variance?
I would actually like to see if they would consider the plugs and all of that recommended by staff, all of that stuff before I,
Okay.
and then, I guess I would kind of like to see the new caliper with the 824 caliper inches of trees instead of the 907 or whatever it was. Just to see where that is and where we land with how much they need to still have. I guess if this isn't the updated, I guess I'd kind of like to see what the updated is.
Okay. So then staff, what again are the dates that, when do we plan on meeting again and when is this going to city council?
So if you're proposing to table for a little bit, more detailed plans, the next Environmental Commission meeting is scheduled for February 23rd. We had to reschedule due to the President's Day holiday. And then that would be the same week that the Planning Commission and, no. Yes. That would be the same week that the Planning Commission and Design Review Board look at the conditional use permit and design review. So it would meet the timeline there. I'm not sure about turning around your recommendation for that February 27th meeting, but I haven't heard the exact date, I think, for the city council review. It does appear that we do have time according to the 60-day rule. So that certainly is a prerogative. I know we've seen 3 wetland buffer variances in the last few months. So we've had a lot of practice here. And the plans we had tabled because they weren't very detailed. And it did end up in a much better result, you know, once the Environmental Commission could look at those detailed plans. And what more detail could we see here? I guess we could see the location of where the plugs are versus the seed, you know. And then you'll note in that environmental review, our natural resource coordinator brought up a lot of kind of some concerns about some of the species of plants. So we could possibly, well, we can work with the developer to come up with more detailed plans if that's your prerogative.
I mean, I actually like how our conversation is going, and I really think that this is gonna be a good thing. I just think, just personally, I think I would really like to see some more, like, I was really excited to hear that this wasn't the, you know, latest update and they made some improvements, and I'm like, oh, where are they? It would be nice to see those because I think that he's heard a lot of our concerns, and it looks like they've gone through this so much. I just want to make sure that we have the full scope before we decide.
I am of the opinion that they're going to be working from this your updated review, your updated plans, and that's going to be what the work. You know, anything that we say is not. You know,
Don't make us obsolete here.
I'm not trying to make us obsolete, but it's that I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say. Is that I can't verbalize what I'm going to say. I don't see what else can be gained from asking for more. They only have a limited space that they can operate in, and they've got a plan of action for working within that area. So
I think I kind of see us as a pause button, and they've come up with some ideas about, you know, better caliper trees and the plugs, which they hadn't decided on yet because they hadn't. That's just seed at this point, and I want to see if that's something.
May I?
Please.
So staff recommended the plugs, which we're okay with.
Okay.
That's not an issue. I was simply providing a comment from my landscape architect saying, hey, we noticed they requested using plugs. Just so you know, we typically do seed in the upland areas, and the plugs are more expensive. So I'm not saying we're opposed to doing plugs. If you guys want to approve plugs tonight, that's okay. But and that was staff's original recommendation anyway. I guess I just wanted to provide you
Not
with
have that
intel from my
pause
landscaping.
point.
Yeah. So and then with respect to the trees, the updated. I don't know for certain you're going to be able to tell a major difference between this plan and the updated plans with us removing fewer trees. Either way, like I said earlier, we're going to have to pay into the tree fund just because of our limited space on the site.
Right.
So, literally, my direction to my landscape architect is maximize the site with as many trees and plantings as possible,
Sure.
and so that's what we've tried to do at this point.
And I think the pause button for me is maybe not so much for you guys, but just for us. I like visiting the site. It's so different than what it seems like on here. And it's just, I wish that I could see it in the spring because it's, right now it seems so limited. Like, you know, I'm kind of sad that you guys are trying to put all this stuff into this little lot, but it just seems smaller than it does even on here. So I guess it's just because of the perspective of being out there, walking around a little bit, and just kind of trying to picture what it would be like and how that it would. I can't believe that neighbor right next to you is just like, I just don't want to see it. That's all she said, basically.
Mrs.
Yeah.
Guzzo, yeah.
Yeah, I was
Her and I
like,
have had
wow, because
several
it's going to impact
conversations.
her.
Yeah.
This is going back behind her house, right?
Yeah, we are, I don't know if you noticed in the plan,
Yeah.
we are providing, I think, like 23,
Yeah.
very nice screen trees.
That's
and,
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she'll appreciate that, because it
Yeah.
really would benefit her property.
Yeah, well, especially along the entryway there to County Road C.
Yeah.
There's an
It's
old
just a
fence there.
fence,
right?
yeah.
So I would I would say we're going to improve it significantly compared to.
Yeah, oh, yeah,
Its
it
current
looks
state.
terrible right now.
Yeah.
And I no doubt think that this is gonna help that neighborhood in that area. I just, like I said, I wasn't here for the last one, and it's so hard to make decisions in the winter because it just looks so different in the spring and where things are and how things lay and where water goes and all of that stuff. And I haven't been out to this spot during any of those times other than the winter. So, I guess, I'll go along with what you guys say, but that's my first gut instinct is to pause just to kind of see what's happening. I guess it sucks that we don't talk cross commissions because I think that would be beneficial in this area. But there's so many good things about this. I really want to help them make a good property here.
Staff, I was just wondering if you could pull up, I can't find it in the packet, the recommended conditions for approval.
I apologize, I don't really have that. So on the environmental review, all the detailed,
Okay.
is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Okay, so I could show it, but there's so many
Yeah, no,
words.
that's fine. I was just.
But I would like to go over it a moment with you, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So, first, I just wanted to point out that this is a very challenging lot, and of course, Maplewood is almost fully developed, and we have these little pockets left. And the reason these little pockets remain is because, they have these wetlands and other challenges, and this is really one of the challenges, most challenging lots that I've seen. We've had several proposals over the years for different things, and developers usually walk away because determine that it was not cost effective to develop this site. So it really has been a pleasure working with this developer because they were amenable to, they're trying to maintain that wetland buffer, that 100 feet, 75-foot averaging. But of course, because of the stormwater, which of course improves the site, they couldn't with the wetland buffer. So I just wanted to point that out because we have had a lot of proposals here, just ideas, and they all walked away. So now on this environmental review, that is something that the environmental planner, myself, and our natural resource coordinator, we take a real detailed look at the plans and focusing in on the wetland buffer impacts and then the tree impacts. And this details the recommendations, and I will go over those briefly here. So first of all, the recommendations for the tree impacts are, so we would require this prior to issuance of a grading permit. So they would have to submit these plans to the city prior to us even issuing that permit. And we would like to see a few changes in the tree mitigation table, just some things that we noticed weren't consistent, but really is the revised landscape plan and adding additional trees, because of course they're in the deficit there, so that's number one. And then our natural resource coordinator points out that there's far too many maple trees in Maple right now. Maplewood, go figure. So in order to prevent diseases from wiping out the same species of the tree, she's proposing a different species, kind of replacement species from the maples that are being proposed there. And then there's 2 trees which she's identified as non-native or invasive. So she's recommending that those be replaced with some more climate resilient or pollinator supporting species. So you can see that this gets really into detail. And so this would be all part of your approval here tonight. And if you wanted to add anything, we'd plug it right in here. And then she even gets into detail about the tree maintenance. Apparently quaking aspen, it's a clonal species, so it spreads from the root, kind of suckering, so she points that out. And then the city of Maplewood does take in an escrow for trees, ensuring that we have $60 per caliper inch of trees to be replaced on that site. And then that money is returned once all the trees are planted with a 1-year warranty. And then, of course, this tree fund payment, once it's all settled and we determine exactly how many trees are planted, how many are removed, we can figure out the calculation here. As you can see right now, it is quite a hefty fee that the developer would have to pay into the city's tree fund, estimated at about $30,000. So then on the wetland recommendations, again, requiring prior to a grading permit, revised landscape plan, and, calling out that we'd like to see some plugs in addition to the seed. Now, we weren't real specific about where you put the plugs or what percentage, and maybe that's something you want to add some more detail on. And then just basically that those should be installed 12 to 24 inches apart. Our natural resource coordinator even outlined some native seeding installation methods. Loosening the soil will expose weed seeds and aid in their germination. So she talks about topsoil should not be loosened, seeds should be drilled into topsoil. So it gets pretty detailed. And then that condition that they add the wetland buffer signs. And then finally, that cash escrow or letter of credit, which would be, and we'd retain that for 3 years, and the signing of that maintenance agreement. So those are all the detailed recommendations that you would be approving tonight, if you were to recommend it. And then they would work with staff on all of these to ensure it's complete prior to issuance of that grading permit. So if you wanted to add any more detail in here, if that made you feel more comfortable to move this forward, that certainly is a possibility as well.
Thank you, staff. Are there any requests to add in some more detail?
I just have a quick question. In the trees that they're looking to put in, how come there's no oak, bur oak, or white oak? Because that's what they're taking out, and they're not in this. Do we have too many of those because we're oak savanna, or is that just not on the list?
I don't have the answer, and I'm not sure, I'm not a tree expert. I don't know that an oak would do well in this kind of impacted environment.
That's what they're taking out.
Right.
So I know that they do well.
Oh, but now it's all graded and impacted,
Yeah.
so, but that's certainly something I consider.
But
Oak trees, you want to add something like that?
Well, we are, depending
one
on
of
climate
those
change.
specimen oaks that was at least keyed out is going to be remaining on site, correct, staff?
One of them, yeah.
Correct. Yeah, and those two trees were located on the west side of the building.
And it's just saying 85 trees, or excuse me, there are 124 large trees. Those are the only two that were identified as specific
Specimen.
oaks. So there's likely the trees that are remaining that aren't going to be in the, that aren't in the impactor zone. There's the likelihood of there's oak trees being there.
I'm just saying that we're replacing those. We maybe could, they're not even listed here is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I would just say we'll continue to work with staff to find alternative.
Okay.
I mean, if you want to specify, you'd like an oak or you'd like some oak there insofar as it's compatible with.
The river birch would grow really well there.
Yeah.
And
I can't recall exactly what the soils are here, but I know I live over in Plymouth and the soils are heavy clay and oaks hate it.
No,
And so,
it's-
and because this is so wet, I wouldn't be surprised if, or portions, especially like toward the buffer areas.
Yeah.
I'm actually frankly surprised that a couple of those oaks are
that
where
big.
they are. because they tend not to grow well in clay and wet soils. But all that being said, we're more than happy to continue to work with staff to figure out alternatives.
think
And
it's
then
gonna
the
be
other
drier.
Species.
It just said these were recommendations to make sure that there's a diverse canopy than what's there,
Right.
to make sure that it's not, monoculture of maple trees
Right.
or, and just suggestions of things to replace the invasives with. It's not that these are saying this is what you have to plant. It was just
Right.
plant a diversity of things, which includes oaks.
Yes.
It just didn't, that's why.
It just, yeah.
That's why I'm like, can we include oaks in the list? Is all.
Would,
That's
staff, can we add oaks to the list?
Yes, I'm going to add, consider oaks
Thank you.
if they do well
If they
in
do
that
well.
location.
If they do
Thank
well in
you.
that location.
Okay, so I'm again going to ask, do we feel comfortable making a motion to approve the recommended action?
I do.
Would you like to make a motion, Commissioner Gill?
I'll make a motion to approve the wetland variance following staff conditions.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, so moved. So thank you very much for coming,
Hey,
and
of
we
course.
do appreciate your comments and your availability to answer our questions.
Sure thing. Thank you all.
So look forward to seeing this project as it develops.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, continuing on with our agenda. Is there any unfinished business? None? All right, and I do not see any more visitors, so no visitor presentations. Any commissioner presentations this evening? Okay, staff, take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a few announcements. As you know, we have 2 vacancies on our Environmental Commission, and the City Council did interview, they held interviews on Monday, during Monday's workshop. There were 6 applicants, and they held 5 interviews, and they will be appointing the 2 commissioners during their regular meeting, which will be February 13th. So we can announce those after that date. And so hopefully we'll have them on board for our February meeting.
Quick question on that, staff, only because I'm peeking ahead to item D on this, and that's the election of chair and vice chair. Are these new members, will they be active participants in the election? I mean, will they be eligible to vote, basically? I'm just curious.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So moving on, I think it's time that we held a workshop to do some goal setting. Really focus in on how we want to spend our time this year. And I know we've had some success in the past by holding a workshop prior to the meeting. We could do it in the Maplewood room. We do have to, announce that there'll be a quorum in that room and hold it open for the public if someone wanted to come in. But that's an opportunity, perhaps we could get some dinner. So I'm suggesting, I think instead of February, because we will have new members, maybe that March meeting would be best. And I will send out a follow-up email to all commissioners on that proposal. Then I wanted to remind you of the rescheduled February and March meeting dates. This was due to President's Day holiday and, well, to be perfectly honest, my vacation. Sorry about that. So the dates are...
Do we all get that day off?
Sure.
Okay.
Take it. Thursday, February 23rd will be the rescheduled date in February, and then Wednesday, March 29th. And those were dates that worked best for a majority of the commissioners. I think maybe all for the March date. And of course, I'll let our new commissioners know about that rescheduled date as well. And then finally, election of chair and vice chair. We usually announce this in December, kind of giving everyone an opportunity to think about it. If you're considering stepping in and, being part of the leadership here, so you kind of let it sink in, think about it. But we didn't have a December meeting, so I'll bring it up tonight. And then if we have, a quorum or a majority of people here in February, we should probably just hold the election then. Unless you wanted to wait because we have 2 new members, but I think maybe we'll just do it February. How about that?
Yes.
I made the decision. Made the decision. All right, excellent. Right. They don't want, they won't know what hit them.
I think that's what Tripler did with me, remember? Yeah. Remember? I had no idea. And he's just like, I'm just going to appoint her. Do you remember that?
Welcome to the commission.
I know.
You are the chair. Yeah, that's probably what happened.
And Anne had to walk me through every meeting.
Well, that is all I have. Thank you.
Do you see that you passed out an email, and I'm just wondering, a printed copy of an email, I'm wondering if you can describe this?
Oh, thank you. Some of you don't, excuse me, I'll start over. I was going to say, some of you don't look at your emails, but that's not, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that. So I wanted to make you aware. This was an email that was sent by our city manager, and it is to the Planning Commission, Design Review Board, Parks and Rec, and Environmental and Natural Resources, and our Historic Preservation and Housing and Economic Development Commission. I should have said just it's sent to all commission and commissioners. It's informing you of this engagement process that the city of Maplewood will be holding in regard to the Purple Line in Maplewood. Of course, that is the Vento Trail, the proposed bus rapid transit line. And the meetings will be held throughout February and then beginning in March. There will be 5 meetings, and they're public meetings to kind of narrow in on different subject matters. Like the first meeting in February 1st will be guest presenters from Met Council. The second meeting on February 15th will be guest presenters from No Purple Line Association. February 22nd, members of the business and community. February 28th, this will be open to the public and residents for comment and feedback. And then the last meeting, March 8th, will be used to conduct final overview, review transit options, and develop recommendations. So they're making all commissioners aware of this, but of course it is a public forum. Anyone can attend. It's here in the City Council chambers from 6 to 8 p.m. on those dates. Thank you.
Thank you very much, staff. And I think that brings us to the end. Is there a motion to end the meeting?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All right, Commissioner Miller has made a motion to adjourn. And second by Commissioner Gill. All in favor? I think we all say aye on this one.
Aye.
Aye. All right. So we have adjourned at 8:24 p.m.